Hey everyone, welcome to the first devlog for my indie game, Honor for Hire. Honor for Hire is a turn-based tactical RPG where you venture the world as one of the classic 4 roguelike characters, the Knight, the Rogue, the Ranger, and the Wizard, all while completing quests, solving puzzles, and growing in power. The scope for this project is quite massive, I must admit. But before I dive too in depth on my future plans, how did we get here? I'm currently solo developing this game in the Godot engine, and I create all of my art in the pixel art program Sprite. The project itself started in September of 2021 when I decided it was the perfect time to start a new game. I had dabbled in pixel art before, even developed a smaller game the previous year, but I hadn't really found anything that I wanted to stick with, so I started to brainstorm. The main inspirations for Honor for Hire were games like The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past and the recently released Archvale. I wanted my game to have the same kind of adventuring gameplay, exploring an expansive world with lots of different enemies to fight and cool secrets to unlock. But I needed something that would make the game more interesting and different from other games in that genre. I really enjoy playing roguelike games like Pixel Dungeon, and so I decided that I would introduce a turn-based system into Honor for Hire. But the possibilities that opened up were overwhelming, if I am completely honest with myself. I had no idea where to start when it came to this new project. Like I said earlier, I'd only created one small game before, and it was in a completely different engine. I was basically starting from square one, and I had to learn the entirety of the Godot game engine, which is a little more complicated than I thought it would be. Luckily for me, I already had some programming experience at this point, so picking up GDScript wasn't all that bad. The first thing that I created was the movement system that you see here. Essentially, when the player is pressing a direction to move, the game constantly updates their target position whenever a new tile is reached. It also outputs a signal that's outputted when the player reaches that tile. This makes sure that the movement feels smooth and continuous, and not jerky or disjointed. When I got the movement done, I was thinking, hey, this Godot stuff isn't too bad after all. This project will go by much faster than I thought. Then I started making enemies, and as a result, pathfinding. And well, as expected, that got complicated quickly. I would say that the majority of my time spent in Godot working on Honor for Hire has been bug fixing or improving the enemy pathfinding. Using the A-star pathfinding system, I now have it to the point where enemies can draw a path to the player on the tile grid. All the variables I use are adaptable, such as enemy speed, so changing these goblins to move 2 tiles shouldn't be an issue, and I can just have faster enemies easily, right? Yeah, I'll probably deal with that later. But one of the coolest things I've made yet is combat. These little goblins that chase you around can in fact be killed, but watch out, so can you. I have some pretty neat animations for both the Knight and the Goblin attacking right now, and as I create more enemies, I'll make there be more weapon variety among them so the animations don't get stale. I'll go more in depth on my plans for the combat system in a little bit, but for now, it's quite the basic system, utilizing the turn system and the character's target position to apply damage to the attacked enemy. The final feature that I want to showcase is one that you might have spotted at the beginning of the video, room transitions. When all of the enemies are cleared from a room, I can leave through any of the connecting pathways, which plays a pretty neat custom transition animation that I made. The rooms also store a direction that the player enters and leaves from, meaning that I can set the player position based on where they left the last room. And that's the current state of the project. Lately I've been focusing on the art and planning side of things, because I like having all the assets that I need to create a room designed before I lay that room out. Most of my time recently has been spent designing a world layout in a notebook and creating a bunch of larger assets like these houses. The plan at the moment is to make a tutorial area with the starting town and a couple of easier quests to complete, and that's what all of these different assets are going to be used for, building the town itself. But on a related note, what are my plans for the future of Honor for Hire as a whole? One of my first ideas for the game was the characters. As I mentioned in the introduction, there are 4 different playable characters that will be included in the final game, but what makes them unique is the ability system I plan to implement in the future. Each character will have its own unique slate of abilities that can be learned throughout the game, and also different kinds of attacks and passive abilities, which increases the variety and choices that will go into the gameplay. The other major combat idea that I had is the enemies' attacks themselves. Some enemies will be like the goblins I currently have in the game, attacking only when next to the player through a simple stab or swipe. But many of the larger enemies will have dangerously powerful attacks that sort of telegraph themselves a turn or two in advance, requiring the player to pay attention to the battle and move accordingly. These kinds of attacks prevent the issue of monotonous combat from arising, as different enemies can have a variety of unique attack patterns to learn. I think it will also provide a great way of encouraging players to master the combat system. One of the most important components of Honor for Hire is going to be the quest system. In most games with quests, they are given by NPCs and provide positive benefits for the player. In this game, while I want to keep that aspect, I want to focus on the idea of the characters taking quests at the cost of their own honor, hence the title. Maybe the player really wants some extra cash, and this merchant just so happens to have a competitor that he wants out of town. Little interactions like these will drive the story along. I'm thinking of having some kind of reputation system that follows the player throughout the different towns they find on their journey. That brings me to my final idea, the multiple locations that the player can visit. There will be a sequence of 5 with the player descending deeper and deeper into more dangerous areas. The safe and friendly meadow, the dark trees of the forest, the snow-capped peaks, the beautiful crystal grotto, and the perilous pits of the lava caverns. I'm not entirely sure yet what the main questline will entail, but that's a detail that will come with time. The plan is to have difficulty increase with each area, but also the rewards, new towns to explore, new puzzles to try, and new secrets to discover. And that's Honor for Hire. Like I said, this is one of the largest projects I've ever taken on, and that's quite intimidating to me. However, the improvements I've made in both programming and pixel art in the past few months is honestly astonishing to me, and I can't wait to see where I can go from here. So if you do want to keep up to date with the progress on the project, please consider subscribing. From here on out, devlogs will be focused on new features and ideas. Comment any suggestions or tips you have down below. I'm still fairly new to game development, and any advice is welcome. Thank you all for watching, and take care.